that horrible, insane period just after our 2007 elections. You know what I'm talking about. It was the climax of a wild campaign period, which, as far as I remember, the only issue that seemed to be on the table was one's tribe. Gangs, militias were popping up everywhere. You remember them? Gangs like Chinkororo. Did I pronounce it right? Chinkororo in Kisii. Then you had things like Boys of Baghdad in Kisumu, where I come from. We had names like the Taliban. And there was one at the coast. You remember the Sabwat Defense Force or something like that. And then, my God, then there was Mungiki. The Mungiki, these dreadlocked young men known for their ruthlessness. You know, I think our media houses did their best to try to, to censor the kinds of images that were coming through our television sets. But even if you were not directly affected by this thing, we all saw it. We all felt it, didn't we? One particular image that really sent chills down my spine, and some of you will remember this one, where the Mungiki were blockading, they had barricaded the Nairobi-Nakuru road with big boulders. And as Nissans came, these matatus, they were dragging people out, and they were actually chopping them with machetes, leaving them there to die in a pool of blood, in broad daylight, and in the glare of media. So let me fast forward a little bit. 3, maybe 4 months from that moment. The dust was settling. Kenya was struggling to get back to some semblance of normalcy. I had gone to Kisumu. I'd gone to see my folks. I'd spent the weekend there and did a few things. And Monday morning, I decided it's time for me to go back to Nairobi. And so I got into my car and I'd packed everything and I started the engine and I heard a funny noise. Now, I want to admit this. You don't have to discuss it or tell people. I know nothing about car engines, okay? Nothing. So on that day, I hear this noise. I used to drive this old, big diesel Pajero. Gave me nothing but problems. But I love the car. I think it just, maybe because it made me feel, sort of. So on that day, I debated with myself, do I go look for a mechanic to fix it? Do I just go pole and see if I can get to Nairobi, have it serviced there? And I decided on the latter. I said, let me just go by faith. So I began to drive and I drove on and things were okay. I stopped at Londiani, some of you who know that route. I stopped there and I bought some bananas, I bought some vegetables to take home and some roasted maize. And so I drove on, munching away as I went, got to Nakuru. And I drove on. I got to Naivasha, past Naivasha, and just as I was beginning up that hill, my mind went back to that scene on television. I remember thinking these were the killing fields. This was that horrible place where such dastardly things happen. And then boom, suddenly right at that point, there's this loud loud noise in the front of the car. The steam begins to just, pour out of it. The car actually swerved to the right. I almost hit an oncoming car. And I just managed to pull it over to the left. The steering wheel was so stiff, and it just barely stopped. My heart was beating because I felt I just avoided an accident. I opened the door, came out of the car. The steam was still pouring out of the car, and underneath, the water was just pouring everywhere. So I opened the bonnet, I did what I see people doing, you know. I didn't know what to look for. I was actually helpless. I'm standing there. These cars are just whizzing by. Nobody cares to stop about, to help someone who's in trouble. And the sun was going down. I felt like I was actually not in a good place. So as I stood there looking at my engine, going like this, trying to look very smart, suddenly I heard a noise behind me. I turned around, and oh my God. There were 4 young men walking towards me. I'm telling you, there was nobody else in sight. 4 young men walking towards me. One of them had dreadlocks. The other one was wearing a trench coat. And then one had a cap that was sort of hiding his eyes. They were walking towards me steadily. And I said, I am dead. I am finished. I knew it. The Mungiki. For a moment I thought, should I run? But I have these stubby lower legs. I knew I wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So I stood there, actually froze. I was frightened. I was scared. And I stood there like a zombie watching these guys coming. And do you know how they say that your life flashes before your eyes before you die? My life flashed before my eyes. I saw everything. I knew I was going to be in the newspaper the next day. An unknown man found in the gutter. No, seriously, I stood there in fear and total trepidation. These guys walked up steadily towards me, and finally they come and they stand right there, and I am actually breathless. I've heard and I've seen some of the things these guys do. So the guy with the dreadlocks says, Nishida Gan, what's the problem? I said, have you ever been so frightened and just so resigned to your death? I was over. This was it for me. And I just looked at him. I said, Sina Shida. I don't know why you're laughing. These guys are going to kill me. I stood there frozen in my tracks. 4 guys standing in front of me. And then this guy turns around. He walks over to the car engine, and he looks and he starts tinkering around there. I wasn't going to stop him. So I just stood there, and I couldn't quite see what he was doing. So he was doing something, and then he tells one of the guys something in Kikuyu, and I don't understand Kikuyu. This guy runs off, and I said, he's going to get the weapons. The guy comes back, and he's got a bag, a polythene bag. So I'm going. So anyway, he takes out some tools and hands it to this guy. This guy gets back in there, and I couldn't quite see because one of them was blocking my view, so I just stood there, And after a little while, he pulls out a belt, and it's all shredded. He says, this is your problem. So I said, okay. And he said, do you have 3,000 shillings? I knew I had 5,000 shillings. So I sort of went in my pocket and counted, So I gave it to him. What would you have done? I gave it to him, and this guy, without anything else, just turns around, walks over to the road, flags down a matatu, hops in, and drives off. I'm left here with these 3 thugs who are now going to mutilate me. And these guys stand there looking at me, and I'm feeling like, what are we going to do? The sun is going down. I can't even imagine calling somebody. I'm just standing there. Then I thought maybe I can make peace with these guys. So I went slowly to the back seat. I took out my bananas and, I sort of offered. The guy's going, nah, tutaki. I put my bananas back in the car. And actually, we didn't have conversation. They were not talkative. So eventually they go and they sit down on the bank of the road, and I don't know why I'm here. Should I flag a matatu and also just forget all this stuff and go save my life? After a little while, a matatu stops across the road. This guy comes out, and he's holding in his hand what looked like a new belt. He walks past me like I'm not there, comes to the front of the car, and he begins to now tinker around. I walked up now to see what he was doing. And I watched what looked like a master mechanic at work. Undoing this thing. Of course, I don't know anything, but I knew it looked good. And after a while, he says something again to this colleague of his. The guy runs off, comes back with 2 buckets of water. He pours it in, then he says, Gurumisha, start the car. Gurumisha. So I went in and I started the engine, and the engine started nicely. So I stepped out, and I'm still suspicious, I'm still scared, I'm still confused. And this guy says, Nisawa, you can go. I knew there was some game going on here. What does it mean you can go? He shuts the bonnet. He says, that's it, it's okay. So I told this guy, I only have 2,000 shillings left. He said, it's okay. I said, no, please take it. So he took it. By this time, my mind is just spinning like this. And so I don't know if you've ever been in a place where your mind just freezes. It stops to think. And sometimes you say things, you just say it. Maybe it's culture. So I told this guy, I'm going to pray that God will bless you. The guy goes, Guy, kube ni pasta. All these guys, the other 3 guys come and gather around. To my amazement, the guy with the cap takes it off and they bow their heads like this. They want me to pray for them. The Mungiki. I knew it was a serious moment then. I put my hand on this guy's shoulder, and I actually prayed for him. I prayed for them. I don't know, it was probably the most sincere prayer I've ever prayed. I prayed for God to bless them for the kindness they had shown me. And then when I finished, they say, Amen. And they step back. I quietly got into the car, not believing what was happening. I started the engine again. It started. And as I began to drive off, I looked through my rearview mirror, and the guys who were supposed to murder me and mutilate me are standing there going like this. And let me tell you, As I made my way to Nairobi that afternoon, that demon of fear, the demon that would lead me to stereotype 4 innocent young men, the demon that would lead me to judge, maybe even hate somebody I don't know because of their outward appearance. That I would write them off as killers and devils instead of the ministering angels that they turned out to be. The demon that would lead me to judge a person by his outward appearance, not knowing what is in his heart. Thank you.